frustrated your CPA didn't save you tax money? You might have been asking the wrong person the wrong question. Your creative genius deserves the same precision behind the numbers.
Welcome to Let's Get Fiscal, hosted by Anastasia, Myiesha, and Danielle.
Part of the women-led team at Coterie Tax.
From smart tax moves to cash flow strategy, we decode everything it takes to run a thriving, creative business
so you can scale with confidence and sleep easy at night.
Press play and let's grow your business.
So I know when I get on a lot of calls with business owners, a lot of times when they're looking for a new accountant is because there's some type of frustration there that they've experienced. Yeah. So one of the things that I notice a lot is I always say you don't necessarily know the question to ask if you don't even know what the conversation is. So it might not necessarily be that there's any shortcomings on either party. It's just there's a miscommunication between what you want and what they're actually providing you. So I like to say it's kind of like you hire a plumber to come into your house to fix your sink, but there's a light bulb out. So you're upset because the plumber saw that your light bulb was out, but they didn't change the light. So it's just... Yes, they probably can do it. They probably are very handy because they're in those trades. But number one, that's not what their main focus is. They're not an electrician. They're in a completely different zone of home improvement, a completely different trade. And also, they're there to fix the kitchen sink because that's what you asked them to do.
Yeah.
So what is their responsibility to change your light bulb? And even let's say they see it, they want to take that proactive action and be like, hey, your light's out. I'm just going to replace it for you. What are the chances that they have the exact light bulb that you need in the back of their car? All of their equipment is plumbing equipment. So even if they do go out of their way to do it, do they actually have the skills and the time and the tools to be able to do what you actually need? And so that's what I say. It's really good to be able to know what it is that you actually need and the definitions of a lot of these conversations.
Totally. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So I guess let's break it down then. So, because I know that there's a lot of titles out there. So I guess let's start from the beginning. Like, what's an accountant?
Yeah.
So what should they be in charge of?
Right. So accounting, it's a really kind of broad term and it's used a lot, kind of like CPA, but an accountant is someone who is analyzing a situation. And that's really the basis of it. And they can analyze a lot of different things. And so that's why it's kind of used as a little bit of a blanket term.
Okay.
But like everything, there's going to be some nuance and some very specific trades within that term for what you need.
So then where does like a bookkeeper come in then?
So a bookkeeper is someone that is helping you day to day.
Okay.
So they're just recording what is happening. So a bookkeeper, they are keeping your books. And again, they're not an accountant, so they're not necessarily analyzing what's happening. They are just making sure that whatever has already happened is going into the correct buckets and it's starting to tell the story of what's happening in the business.
Gotcha.
So the bookkeeper, they might do accounts payable, which is helping you pay your vendors and your bills. They could do accounts receivable, which is sending invoices to your clients and collecting payments. But a lot of it, they're really focused on the day-to-day operations of the business and not much else.
Okay, so bookkeeper, day-to-day, accountant, analyzing what the bookkeepers are doing in the day-to-day. So two positions basically there. Okay, so then how does like a CPA come into play then?
Yeah, so a CPA, again, is a very blanket and broad term.
Okay.
So...
another one.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because there's, even in the CPA world, just... in order to become a CPA, you do have to have experience. You do have to take these really fairly difficult exams in all aspects of accounting. So just because you've taken a test in taxes doesn't necessarily mean that that's your main focus.
Okay.
So there are CPAs that focus on taxes. There's CPAs that focus on nonprofits. There's CPAs that focus on manufacturing or, just
it's broad. Like it just depends on like where they decide to focus on.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could get one.
So when you're saying like, oh, I want to have a CPA and my friend is a CPA, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's kind of like if you're a car mechanic. There's some car mechanics that like I have like a 72 Volkswagen Bug. I can't take that to a Chevy dealership.
You're putting that out there to the universe, aren't you?
I can't take that to a Chevy dealership and expect them to know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It takes like a very specific mechanic who works in Volkswagen, who understands those older cars. So that's really what's happening with taxes too.
That makes sense.
You want to make sure that you're going to a CPA that is very specialized in this area. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a CPA, but that's kind of the terminology that a lot of people put on someone who is just really hyper-focused in tax and, business financials. But just because a person is a CPA doesn't necessarily mean that they can read financials.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good to know. Okay, so then on the tax side of thing, like a tax preparer versus an EA versus a tax strategist, like how do they come into play?
So especially when you're talking about taxes, you see a lot of different terms come into play. And so in taxes, really anyone can file taxes for you. There's no special training requirement. Literally,
that is interesting.
All you have to have is a social security number.
Okay.
And
people will just let you do it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
people
fun.
Let you do it. So, I mean, when you go to H&R, when you go to some of these like big blocks, tax places, they don't necessarily, like maybe they've gone through like a proprietary training, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've been to like college for 4 years and, the whole thing, because it doesn't require all of that training in order to do taxes. So that's where you want to be really careful when you're selecting someone for your business and understand what all of the different designations are. So like you said, there is the enrolled agent, or also called an EA. And then you also have a CPA, or you just have a regular tax preparer, which again is somebody that doesn't have any credentials. And not to say that they don't have experience to do that or any specific training. But an enrolled agent is where they have taken tests that are provided by the IRS. And it's only specifically focused on taxes. So it's kind of the IRS setting a certain threshold for a requirement of education in order to get that title.
Okay, that makes sense.
In a similar way that a CPA is something that's provided by each individual state. So each state is going to have different requirements in order to receive the CPA designation. And again, the CPA, you do have the test on tax, but you also have tests on auditing and, nonprofits and government financials. And so it's a very broad set of exams versus the enrolled agent is hyper-focused only on taxes.
Okay, so is that then like almost like the bar exam for an attorney, but like there's like a CPA accounting bar and then there's like a taxes bar. So, okay, all right.
Yep.
So like maybe going towards that because you at least know if they have that they have that knowledge of like what the IRS needs and how to do things correctly. Yeah.
Right. So with the enrolled agent and the CPA, there is that just base level of education, and then they have to continue all of that education in order to keep their designation active. And then also on top of that, there's a certain requirement for a level of ethics.
Oh, okay.
So that's really the big thing is an enrolled agent and a CPA. There's basically a list of rules of how you are able to operate your business in a transparent way and different ways that you're allowed to say things and how you handle your clients. And if you are just a tax preparer and you don't have any of those designations, they're not necessarily held to those same ethical standards.
Gotcha.
So that's another thing to just be a little bit careful of. Again, there's nothing, anyone can file taxes. Anyone can have this sort of knowledge. But even for a tax preparer, it's normally good to go through and at least get that enrolled agent designation so that everybody is clear on you have this at least base level of education and knowledge. And when it comes to a business owner, sometimes people are really big on, I only want a CPA. But you also want to recognize that an enrolled agent, the test between the tax CPA, the test that CPAs take about taxes and the test that enrolled agents take about taxes are very similar.
Okay.
They're going to cover a lot of the same information. So you can have the same experience with an enrolled agent as you can with a CPA.
Okay.
It's just kind of my thing. So just knowing that an enrolled agent is available, they are out there and they're another source so that you're not, you're kind of opening up a few other opportunities there to find the right person that fits for you and fits for your business and helps you get to that next page. But then within that, so we have those are the different types of people.
Yeah.
You have someone who is just registered to file taxes. You have someone who is an enrolled agent who has been approved by the IRS that they say that they have this level of education. And then you also have a CPA who is approved by your state saying that they have a base level of education and experience in the entire accounting field. And then they just chose to further go further into that tax, into the tax industry.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
But within that, so now we know who the people are, but it's also what do they do?
Okay.
So we have the tax preparer, and that's kind of what's been traditionally, everybody says, I have a CPA and they prepare my taxes, and so as a small business owner, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody that can go and prepare your taxes. But as the kind of industry changes, we're also more focusing on what's kind of developing as more of a tax strategist.
Okay.
So there is a difference between the two. So you have tax preparation, which is just filling out the boxes. And I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But really they're just going in, they're filling out the boxes on a piece of paper. A tax strategist is, again, going through and analyzing what is in each of those boxes. How do you live your life? What are your goals? And then how can we get you to achieve those goals using the tax law that's available to you?
Okay.
So again, it's kind of like that bookkeeper versus accountant. So someone who's going to handle just the day-to-day information versus somebody who's going to take a step back and look at the whole picture and say, okay, what's actually happening here and what are our goals and where do we need to go from there? So, and some of that also plays into kind of that CFO role.
Okay.
So we also have that guy coming in and we'll see those come in a lot more as well because right now we're kind of moving away from data entry to more of forecasting. And so a CFO helps you do that. They help you determine, how much cash are you going to have? Can you afford to hire another part-time person? How do you actually reach all of those goals, stick to a budget, all of those kind of fun things? What is your cost of goods percentage of, your sales, your gross profit, margins?
So another big picture overall look is what the CFO position would be. Okay.
Yeah. So if we want to talk about your financials, you kind of have that first layer, which is the bookkeeper who's going through and looking at all of the transactions day to day, helping you with that. You have the accountant that's doing a bit of analysis and looking for, okay, maybe you spent $1,000 on meals last month, but you spent $5,000 on this month. What happened there? Why did that occur?
Yeah.
And they're looking into things like that versus a CFO who's looking forward and saying, okay, you want to make X amount of money, your gross profit percentage, your gross profit margin is X, and your cost per customer acquisition is Y. So we need to have these amount of clients. We need to do this amount of ad spend in order to get all of this stuff. So those are the questions that CFOs are kind of answering, all of those forward looking. And then on the tax side, you have your tax preparer who, again, is working on the forms, making sure those are presented properly. And then you have your tax strategist who's actually, again, looking forward and saying, okay, what are your goals and how do we meet them?
Okay. No, I like that. So I guess the next kind of question would be, because those are a lot of positions and stuff. And if you're a small business owner, how do you know which position or who you need to hire? Like, how do you know who to hire?
Yeah. And I mean, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And a lot of these positions can be the same person.
That is true. You do have the EA and the CPA behind your name. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's fair. Overachievers over here. But right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So somebody could be all of those people. You just have to be very clear on what it is that you actually want.
Okay.
And recognize that there's going to be cost differences between the two.
Yeah.
So if you're paying a bookkeeper and you're paying them, I mean, I'd say like $150 an hour to do your books, they're not going to be able to do that CFO level work, which is closer to like $400 an hour.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. So that's where you kind of have to make sure that you are selecting the right person, but you're also paying them a rate where they have enough time to be able to do that. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's why the fees are so much higher on the CFO rate, because it does take extra time to be able to do all of those items versus going through and saying, okay, Starbucks is coffee, Starbucks is coffee, Starbucks is coffee. That's going to be like, it's a low brain drain on what they're doing. So for those higher level tasks, they are going to cost you more money. But what you're doing is you're buying that person's space in their brain to be able to hyper focus only on you. And because they are able to focus on you and they have all of the tools to help you, that's where you'll actually see a lot of those returns on your investment versus, like I said, trying to get a plumber to change your light bulb. Yeah, it might be cheaper because you already called the guy out and whatever, but it probably won't be the light bulb that you need. And it might fix the be a Band-Aid fix, but it won't actually solve your situation. So that's why you just have to be very clear on what it is you actually want. Do you want somebody who's going to just make sure that everything is in the right bucket for when you file your taxes? If that's the case, yes, then that's just a bookkeeper. And you can go with that. If you want to find somebody who's actually looking and saying why all of these things are happening, then that's going to be your accountant role. But if you also want somebody who's looking forward and trying to predict what you need to do next, how do I have this goal, how do I get there? That's going to be your CFO role. And then the same with taxes. If you say, I want to save money on taxes, you can't go to a tax preparer to do that, or you can't pay for tax preparation to do that. You have to very specifically say, I want to have a tax strategy. I want to be able to take the time and really think about what I want to pay in taxes and not, I always say, don't wait for the IRS to tell you how much to pay because they're always going to tell you the higher number, So,
of course.
So that's where it really comes into play that you need to be very clear about the things that you want, because a tax preparer is more than happy to tell you how to save on taxes. And a lot of times they will, just in smaller, maybe smaller chunks, because I mean, if I see somebody that could save $20,000, I feel bad if I,
you don't say anything. Right.
But at the same time, I'm just kind of like giving you one nugget of information, but I don't have enough time to really focus on getting you to that goal because you're not paying me for that. And, now I have to spend, instead of spending my time focusing on you and your tax strategy, I'm focusing on somebody else and somebody else's tax preparation. So, a lot of tax accountants, they get into the field because they want to help, but it is the whole idea that if they're only preparing your taxes, they're not going to look into why some of these numbers are what they are or what you should be doing to avoid some of that. And then that's when people say like, oh, I went to my tax accountant, they prepared my return in April. And then they were like, oh yeah, you probably should have done this last year and it could have saved you 10 grand. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell me before? And it's like, well, I mean, you're asking them to call you out of the blue.
To be like, hey.
And we're more than happy to do that. But, you just have to make sure that you're communicating that that's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. So knowing what you want to then figure out who is going to be the best fit for you or like what they should focus on when you do hire them. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So then AI is on the rise and all that. So like how does that really come into play? What do you think with it in the finance world?
Yeah. So I think a lot of different things are changing in the accounting landscape. I mean, there's more people that are looking for remote jobs and working from home. So bookkeeping is kind of on the rise. CPAs are kind of going, I guess, out of fashion is a nice way to say it. So they're harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
So, really we're trying to use technology to bridge a lot of the talent gap that's out there. And so AI is going to be really super helpful. And we already see a lot of firms that are using a lot of it. I mean, I think one of the firms, they went from like an individual doing your bookkeeping, they've laid off everyone and they transferred everybody over to an AI-based system that's $30 a month and all of that fun stuff. Because if you're going to train a human being, you might as well train AI and then they won't make any mistakes. You don't have to tell them, the same thing 5 different times. And that is wonderful and that is great. But we kind of have 2 caveats is number one, in a lot of cases, you still have to train AI. So you have to know the information to how to train it.
Exactly.
And a lot of it is all of those questions. So when you go into ChatGPT, you have to have a prompt to be able to get that. And your response from ChatGPT is only going to be as good as what your prompt was. So that's kind of where that CFO level and that tax strategist are going to come into play because they're going to be able to customize things to you so that you actually know what questions to be able to ask. And then we also have time. So time is the biggest thing that I say with small business owners because even if it takes me an hour to do it, it could take you 3 or 4 hours. And how much are you charging your clients? So if you're charging your clients, let's say $500 an hour, and it takes you 4 hours to do this thing, that's $2,000 that you just lost completely. On top of, you may have also lost out on tax savings. So let's say it cost you, $3,000 to do it yourself, or you could have paid a bookkeeper for an hour at $150 an hour to do that exact same thing. So you have to take into consideration the value of your time and then also the value of the other person's expertise. And when those items are no longer in your favor, it makes more sense to invest money into getting this done so that you can focus on your business and what's important, what your core competency is, but know that everything on the financial side is being taken care of. So you have this level of confidence going into your business and focusing on that, knowing that you have that kind of like stopgap behind you to help you so that you don't feel like you're floating out into the, out into the ocean.
Exactly.
And like you kind of, I always call it like a throw and hope in April, where you're just like, okay, I didn't want to look at this the whole year because I was too afraid of it.
Yeah.
So let's go in April, figure it out. And I guess I'm, just going to owe the IRS money for the rest of my life, kind of things. Exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And in a lot of cases, it will, even if the sticker price is a little bit expensive, like I said, the IRS is going to charge you even more.
Yeah.
So, it makes more sense to just do it right the first time, kind of have a handle on it, be able to focus on growing your business while somebody else is focusing on a lot of these like tax savings and, compliance items.
Yeah. No. So you can do it, but it's more of a question of should you do it? Like,
Right.
like, is that where you should be focusing your time or should that? Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even, like family time, like I said, like maybe you have the time to do it, but is that necessarily the best use of your time?
Exactly.
And what can you actually get out of it? And so AI will help bridge a lot of that gap and get you a lot farther than what it has in the past. But there's still going to be a few gaps. And especially if you're a business owner and you're hyper-focused on the business, you need another person that's hyper-focused on the finances.
Yeah.
So, AI, especially if it's in a software, it's not going to flag you until you log into the software. So if you're too busy to do, like you need somebody that's actually able to log into the software and be able to tell you, give you a heads up of what's going on. And that's why you see a lot of more of coaching positions opening up, because it's having that kind of human experience to help you and advise you through the next pathways of your business.
Okay.
So
no, I like it. I mean, I feel like we got a really good description of like what all kind of positions and things to look for and what good questions to ask. So
yeah. And a lot of it, like I said, it's not necessarily that there's anything wrong with either person. It's just making sure that communication is really, really clear.
Yeah.
And even if this person is kind of doing this on their own out of, because they want to help you in your business, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're reaching their full potential of how they can help you if you were clear on what you actually needed.
Yeah.
So,
no, that does make sense. Awesome.
So when you're ready to make your small business thrive, a lot of the first steps are identifying what would you like to do with this business. And then that will kind of play into what the level of support and the team that you need behind you in order to reach those goals. So whether or not you need help with the day-to-day, whether you need to analyze what's happening so that you can make better decisions, or if you need to look forward into the future to make sure that you're setting the right foundation for today to be able to achieve those goals. And so a lot of that, like I said, just make sure you're not hiring a plumber to change your light bulb, or at least get a general contractor that can do both.
I love it. That's great.
So that's it for this episode. If you would like a little bit more information or you have any questions, put a comment down below or send us an email, and we are more than happy to kind of help you navigate this area of finances for your small business. That's a wrap on Let's Get Fiscal.
Ready to stop guessing and start saving? Click the link in the show notes.
Grab your consult and let's make your business work for you,
not the other way around. You've got this.